You know that feeling, right? You're just walking down the street, minding your own business, you catch a whiff of something, and bam! Suddenly you're not on that street anymore. You are right back in your grandmother's kitchen from 20 years ago. It's wild. It's a memory you weren't even looking for. It's a memory that found you. Well, today, we're going to unlock the science behind exactly how and why that happened. So, the famous writer Marcel Proust had this happen with a tea-soaked cookie, a Madeleine. And that simple taste, that simple smell, it just unlocked this absolute flood of childhood memories he thought were long gone. And you know what? This isn't just some fancy literary thing. It's a real fundamental part of being human. A song comes on the radio. You taste something, you smell something. And these little cues, they're like finding a key to a door in your mind you totally forgot existed. And that right there, that's the central mystery we're diving into. Why? Why do some memories just ambush us? Appearing out of nowhere, totally vivid and complete. But then for other things, we have to really work for it, right? We're consciously digging through our mental files trying to find some specific fact. It really feels like our brains have two completely different ways of getting to the past. And guess what? Turns out, science is showing that feeling is pretty much spot on. Okay, so how do you even study this? I mean, you can't just have someone sit in a brain scanner for weeks waiting for them to smell the right thing. That's just not going to work. No, scientists needed a way to capture these super fleeting, spontaneous memories in the act. So they came up with this really, really clever experiment to basically trigger them on demand and see what was going on. All right, here's the breakdown of how they pulled this off. It happened in 3 phases. First up, encoding. Super simple. Participants learned to connect an abstract shape with a picture of an object, like a sunflower or a guitar. And they also saw if it was on the left or the right side of the screen. Okay. Easy enough. Then came the tests. For the voluntary test, they'd see the shape and were told, okay, try to remember the object. But then, and this is the genius part, for the involuntary test, they were told to do a totally different task, something about judging the shape itself. The researchers just told them, hey, by the way, if the memory of the object just happens to pop into your head, let us know. And this is what that setup actually looked like in the study. Now, I know it might look a little complicated, but this design is absolutely the key to the whole thing. Because of this setup, the researchers could finally precisely compare what the brain is doing in 2 totally different situations, when you're deliberately trying to remember something versus when a memory just shows up. So the big question is, what did they actually find? What happens inside the brain during these 2 kinds of recall? Well, the first major reveal is all about what the memory itself is made of. And it turns out they're like 2 fundamentally different kinds of files saved on your computer. Okay, check this out. The first huge difference is in what gets recalled. Those involuntary memories, the ones that just pop up, they are loaded with raw sensory details. The brain brings back these broad features, like remembering if the picture was on the left or the right side of the screen. It's all sensory. But when you voluntarily search for a memory, it's the total opposite. The brain just pulls up the abstract gist of it, the core concept of the object, without all that extra sensory fluff. It's literally the difference between opening a giant raw image file with all the location and camera data versus opening a simple text file that just says sunflower. And get this, it's not just what you remember, it's how you remember it. Those involuntary memories, they kind of unfold in your brain over a longer time. The researchers literally call it an extended replay, almost like you're watching it in slow motion. Now, contrast that with when you try to remember something. That memory gets retrieved in a super compressed format, like a zip file on your computer. The study actually found that the involuntary memories were less than half as compressed as the voluntary ones. So yeah, one is this slow, rich, sensory replay. The other is a quick, efficient, conceptual summary. But wait, there's more. It's not just the content and the timing that are different. Turns out, these 2 types of memory leave a completely distinct electrical signature in the brain. It's like the brain has its own unique tell for each move, and scientists caught it. So to get this next part, we need a quick primer on something called theta waves. All you need to know is they're like these rhythmic electrical pulses in your brain. You can kind of think of them as the brain's operating frequency when it's doing memory-related jobs. And by tracking these waves, scientists could see exactly which brain processes were firing up and when. And boom, here's the first signature they found. When one of those involuntary memories ambushes you, your brain lets out this rapid burst of theta waves right up in the front. The researchers think this is basically the brain's interference alarm. It's your brain screaming, whoa, 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 something just interrupted what we were doing. And it happens almost instantly. It perfectly captures that feeling of a memory just barging in. Now, look at the difference. When you're voluntarily trying to remember something, you see a completely different brain signal. The theta wave activity comes later, it's slower, and it's much more spread out across the brain. This is what they call the memory search network firing up. It's not a sudden alarm, it's a deliberate, focused process. It's like sending out a detective to go find a specific clue.
So let's just put it all together. What we're seeing here are two completely separate paths the brain can take to get to the past. You've got the involuntary path, it's automatic, it brings back raw sensory details in a slow motion replay, and it triggers that instant interference alarm. Then you have the voluntary path. It's effortful, it pulls up a compressed summary, and it fires up a deliberate search network. It's like the brain has two totally different toolkits for two totally different jobs.
Okay, this is all super cool neuroscience, for sure. But why does it actually matter? What's the real-world takeaway here? Well, it turns out that understanding these two memory pathways has absolutely huge implications, from just our day-to-day lives all the way to understanding some really serious psychological conditions. Really, it all boils down to this one big idea. Our minds access the past in different formats. The best way to think about it is like your computer. Sometimes you open a massive, high-resolution raw image file with every single bit of data. Other times you just open a tiny, efficient text document. Our brains are doing pretty much the same thing. That involuntary sensory replay, that's your raw image file. That voluntary gist-based recall, that's your compressed text file. And this idea of different formats becomes incredibly important when we start talking about things like post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. Think about it. The intrusive flashbacks that are a hallmark of PTSD, they are a powerful and often terrifying form of involuntary memory. People who experience them often say it feels less like remembering and more like reliving the event in all its sensory detail. Well, this research gives us a powerful neural reason for that. It suggests these traumatic memories are essentially hijacking that automatic sensory replay pathway, which is why they feel so vivid, so disruptive, and so terrifyingly present. But here's what I think is one of the most fascinating parts of this whole thing. This doesn't mean we have two different hard drives in our brain for memories. Not at all. What this research suggests is that we have one single, incredibly flexible memory system. The only difference is how we access it, whether we're kicking open the automatic sensory door or we're deliberately unlocking the conceptual one. All right, so let's wrap this up. What are the key things to remember? First, your brain has two distinct ways to time travel to the past. One is automatic, the other is deliberate. Second, those involuntary memories, those Proustian moments, are basically your brain hitting play on raw sensory data. And third, the memories you have to search for are the compressed gist versions. And these two pathways, they are the exact reason why the memory of your first kiss feels so profoundly different than just remembering what you had for breakfast this morning. And so that leaves us with one last big question to think about. If our minds can replay our own past in these two totally different formats, a full sensory reliving versus a quick conceptual summary, what does that actually mean for how we experience our own history? Is your life story just a collection of facts to be recalled, or is it a library of feelings just waiting for the right key to unlock the door?